So today's lesson video, we're going to pick up where we left off with adding fractions. We've already had some practice of adding fractions that have the same sign, and we recognized by using the scoreboard, those numbers will always wind up in the same column. So it's just a matter of adding those numbers up and keeping the sign of the numbers. We got practice in class of adding numbers with different signs, in which case you saw on the scoreboard, those numbers wind up on different sides of the scoreboard. So in those situations, we had to make note of the sign of the bigger number and then subtract the larger number minus the small to get to our answer. With all of this, we're remembering to make use of least common denominators and then adding or subtracting the numerators as we need to, and also remembering to either borrow or carry when necessary. So we have all the practice we need from adding numbers with the same sign, adding numbers with a different sign, to now move on to subtraction. Now, the most important thing to remember about subtraction is that we want to always use keep change opposite as a way of converting the subtraction problem to addition. And that's what's going to get us back into our comfort zone for either adding the numbers with the same sign or adding numbers with different signs. So the first thing I'll do with this problem of -1/6 minus 5½ is do keep change opposite. So using keep change opposite, we can rewrite -1/6 minus 5½ as -1/6 plus -5½. So we're beginning to see this shape up in terms of the scoreboard as being the addition of two numbers that have the same signs. In this case, two numbers that are negative. So I'm going to put the 1/6 on the negative side, and I'm going to put the 5½ on the negative side. And I'm going to make note that my answer will be negative when I add these two numbers up. So now I actually want to move on to the addition. So it's not necessary so much when I add two numbers to do this. It's definitely necessary when I subtract, but I'm just going to rewrite these fractions that we will add with the bigger number on top. That's just kind of gets me in the habit of doing it when it's necessary for subtraction. Okay, and being that it is that I'm going to add, because they were in the same column, I'm now going to convert these to having a common denominator. We should see that the common denominator here is going to be 6. So I'm going to have to figure out 5 1/2 as some number of sixths. Well, that should be 5, let's see, 2 times 3 is 6, so 1 times 3 is 6. So 5½ is 5 3/6. And what I'm going to add to it is the 1/6. So now we can go ahead and add. So remember, we will bring our whole number down. That's 5. We will add our numerators. 3 plus 4, or 3 plus 1 is 4, over the denominator of 6. Don't forget, our answer is negative. Don't forget, our answer is negative. We made note of that with the scoreboard already. So our answer is -5 4/6. Now, what's often forgotten about, and we saw this in our class discussion with one of our problems, is we always want to make sure that we reduce. And we should see that reducing is possible here, because 4/6, if you saw the common factor, it's 2. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Oh, and the -5 that goes with it. So our final answer of -1/6 minus 5½ with keep change opposite, -5/6 plus -5½ is -5 2/3. So that is one problem. Now, normally you would see me move to the next problem, but I actually want to give you practice with a problem that's going to require numbers being on opposite sides of the scoreboard. So we're actually going to look at the -4 1/6 minus -8 3/4. So I'm going to go back, as we said, to starting with KCO. So here's my KCO. I'm going to do negative 4 1/6 plus, it's going to become 8 3/4. Okay, now I'm going to move on to my scoreboard. So you don't need to write this out, but I'm just giving you an idea of what we're doing here. So here comes my scoreboard. Whoops. I'm going to move on to my scoreboard, and I'm going to set that up. So there's my scoreboard, there's my negative, there's my positive, and with keep change opposite, I'm going to work off of those numbers. So 4 1/6 is on the negative side, 8 3/4 is on the positive side. And my scoreboard is going to make it clear to me that my bigger number being positive is going to be the answer that I work with. So here is where we need to align the numbers the right way. Since I am subtracting, as the scoreboard tells me to do, I am going to definitely have to set up my numbers with the bigger number on top. So 8 3/4 minus 4 1/6 will be the math that we do to give us our positive answer. From there, as we know, we will set these up with a common denominator. So I'm doing 8 and something minus 4 and something. So what's the least common denominator of 4 and 6? That's actually 12. So the least common multiple of 4 and 6 is 12. So the least common denominator of 4 and 6 is 12. So here's where we now scale up. So 4 times what is 12? 4 times 3. And therefore 3 times 3 is 9. So 8 3/4 now becomes 8 9/12. 4 1/6, 6 times what is 12? 6 times 2. So 1 times 2, that's 2. So 4 1/6 becomes 4 2/12. So now this is our problem. 8 9/12 minus 4 2/12. Lucky for us, there's no borrowing, so I can just subtract my numerators. 9 minus 2 is 7 over the denominator of 12. 8 minus 4 is 4. Go back, check our scoreboard. Our answer should be positive. Give it a last check to see if I need to reduce. 4 7/12 is already fully reduced. So our final answer for negative 4 1/6 minus negative 8 3/4 is 4 7/12 when we're all done. So your job, so there's no confusion, is to go back and set up each of these other problems using KCO, using the scoreboard, and using what we know about adding numbers that are either the same sign or different signs in all of our rules with fractions, making sure we find common denominators, borrowing when necessary, carrying when necessary, etc. So if you need any review on those, there are the other 2 videos that we've already had, or I should say the one video that we had in the class discussion otherwise in those cases. So we'll check in next class and we'll answer any questions then.